Well, yeah, it's 12 minutes and 35 seconds. I am absolutely gonna cover this bullshit. Um, Let me see what's going on here. It's whatever. It's Saturday. Y'all can play in the street.
You're watching the legal breakdown. So, Glenn, Trump wasn't supposed to have to appear in the courtroom in the Manhattan DA case until, I believe, at the earliest December for the first pretrial hearing. It turns out that he was just ordered by Judge Merchan to appear at a May 23rd hearing. Why is that?
Yeah, Judge Marchand has probably correctly decided that Donald Trump cannot be trusted to abide by the conditions of the protective order Judge Marchand issued last week, telling Donald Trump what he can and can't say, what he can and can't do with the evidence that the prosecutors are giving over in discovery. So,
oh yeah. Thanks again, CNN, for fucking platforming him and allowing him to say whatever the fuck he wanted on Wednesday night with an audience that was cheering him on the entire goddamn time. CNN is so goddamn desperate. It's really sad, you guys. Okay, let's, what's his name? Kirchner? I like both of these dudes. They have good analysis as far as I can. Well, I don't have a legal background, so I can't tell one way or the other. But they seem to be pretty solid on what they give me.
In essence, this is Judge Marchand treating Donald Trump like the dangerous, petulant, untrustworthy person he is. And I really enjoyed the headline from the Associated Press today. Trump to get schooled on rules after district attorneys worry he'll use evidence to slam witnesses. So basically, the judge is going to sit Donald Trump down and he's going to explain line by line exactly what Donald Trump may not do with the evidence that his defense team is about to receive from the prosecutors.
Now, what does he risk if he violates these new restrictions? Because presumably he would still have plausible deniability if he wasn't given this schooling by Judge Merchan. But now that Judge Merchan has ordered him to come in by May 23rd for this hearing, he will have already gotten the warning once. So what does he risk here?
This is where it gets good, y'all. This is where it gets fucking good.
Yeah, that's a really important point, Brian, because Judge Merchan is not doing this hoping that it will impact Donald Trump's behavior and all of a sudden he will start abiding by court orders. No, it is to specifically put Donald Trump on notice. So not if he violates the protective order, but when he violates.
Right. Okay. So this is basically for those of you who only have like work experience and you've never had to like do a lawsuit, which I haven't either, but I can see the parallels, right? I can see the parallels in this, is that there's a certain level of documentation that needs to be established in order to back your decisions up. And that's what the judge is doing right now. In order to have the consequences necessary to actually put the sock in his goddamn mouth. This is what has to happen. And this is what employers do quite frequently by saying, I'm giving you a verbal warning, I'm giving you a written warning, and now you're going to be fucking terminated, right?
Violates the protective order, Donald Trump can say, oh, I didn't know the precise terms of the protective order. Maybe my attorneys misunderstood them. Maybe my attorneys misinformed me. So Judge Merchan has preemptively taken that defense away from Donald Trump. So when he violates the protective order, it will give Judge Merchan everything he needs to hold him in contempt. So what does contempt mean? Well, It could mean a fine. It could actually mean stepping him back into a prison cell for a period of time. And at its sort of most extreme, it could be jailing Donald Trump pending trial because he has proven that he is unwilling or incapable of following court orders while he's on pretrial release. That would be extreme. I don't expect we'll see it. But, when it comes to Donald Trump's dangerous rhetoric, nothing's off the table.
Yeah, seriously, before we get to Brian. This is one of the debates amongst people who want to see criminal justice reform, is that if you have the same fine for everybody, it's not going to have the same impact, right? So charging Donald Trump with a fine is nothing. That is fucking nothing. Okay? Because that motherfucker can borrow money from Russia every goddamn day right now. Because clearly he is surrounding himself with some of the most mafiosa lawyers I've ever seen in my life. Um, they're caricatures of Italians. I'm sorry, but they are. Like, I just saw a video that Hassan did where CNN platform Scaramucci again, who, by the way, pretty much everybody who's ever done business with Donald Trump ultimately ends up criticizing him, right? Scaramucci, the big joke back in 2017 was that he only lasted something like 10 or 11 days on the campaign, as I think he was the press secretary for like 10 or 11 days. And so the big joke after that was, how many Scaramucci's did you last in his administration? Because he kept firing everybody in that first year. And this is partially because he didn't think he was going to win. Anybody who thinks that Trump actually thought he was going to win, y'all mistaken. And this is a problem I have with Hassan Piker's coverage as well. That's that he's like, we all knew he was going to win. Well, some of us could deduce that that was a probability based on like how stupid media was. But I can tell you straight up, those people at the top did not think it was going to fucking happen. And Trump didn't even think it was going to happen. And the picture of him on election night in 2016, he looks goddamn shocked. He did not even have his transition team lined up. And that's something that you're supposed to have before election night. And there was a huge scuffling involved in trying to figure out who was going to represent him. And then the first year, he was constantly firing people. Who was that guy, Sean? The first press secretary. On St. Patrick's Day, he wore a green tie, and people did like used it as a green screen. So good. Some of the memes that came out of this was fucking phenomenal. But Scaramucci lasted about 10 or 11 days or some such bullshit. And he became a running joke. And now all of a sudden he's like mad at Trump because he only stayed that long. But he also went on to Celebrity Big Brother and declared that he was the only person. I'm sure I could find a clip of this, but I don't know if I have the time or energy to do this. He said it was the only person that Trump still listened to. Really. So he thought that when he tweeted out shit that Trump would shut his mouth. I don't know. I mean, like, what else you got going on, Scaramucci, that you feel like you have that kind of power?
You were a federal prosecutor for 30 years. What do you think is the most likely scenario here with a high-profile defendant, a powerful defendant like Donald Trump, if he is held in contempt?
AG1 by Athletic Greens
is a
Yeah, great question. So I dealt with lots of defendants who violated court orders, who violated restrictions that a judge had put on them when they were in pretrial release status. And, you know, the punishment or the sanctions really do run the gamut. Here's what I would expect Judge Merchan to do. For the first violation, it wouldn't shock me if Judge Merchan called him in, read him the Riot Act, and said, look, you were put on specific notice of what you were not allowed to do. You did it anyway. I'm going to give you one warning. You do it again, then there will be a sanction and you will be held in contempt. Then when Donald Trump does it again, the judge might start out with a financial sanction. If he continues to do it, I do think there will come a time when, you know, Donald Trump may find himself inside a jail cell, if only for perhaps a 1 week contempt sanction. But, you know, it really depends on how far Donald Trump wants to push this particular envelope.
Yeah, well, if we've learned anything from the results of the defamation lawsuit, where it took him all of 24 hours before he went right back into defaming E. Jean Carroll again, I think if that gives us any indication, that may very well play out. Glenn, does it hurt Trump's case prematurely if he's already facing these restrictions by Judge Merchan?
It doesn't hurt the case because The jury will never find out about the fact that he violated conditions that were set by the court unless there is some way that it becomes relevant. For example, if Donald Trump violates a condition set by Judge Merchan, and what he does in violating that condition somehow becomes some kind of an admission of guilt in the New York State prosecution, well, then the jury might very well learn about the fact that he made that admission, and we can never put it past Trump to confess to things when he is running his mouth publicly or posting things on his third-rate social media platform. So if he does that and it is admissible evidence, then the jury might not only learn about the admission Donald Trump made, but the fact that he made it after he had been ordered not to. I think it unlikely, but it's not impossible that the jury could come to learn about that, and it could only hurt his cause.
I mean, how wouldn't the jury be able to find out? Because presumably, if we already know, then how could they not know as well?
Right.
Yeah, so this is something that gets sorted out in jury selection. So a juror is not disqualified because he or she knows about the case, read about the case, watched news accounts about the case. Most jurors, when it comes to something like this, will know something about Donald Trump and his history, perhaps his history of misconduct. But the question that the judge will ask those kind of jurors who have some pre-existing knowledge is, can you put it out of your mind? Can you promise to completely disregard it and decide the case based only on the evidence you see?
For those of you trying to get out of jury duty, the answer is no. I don't care which direction you go. I love Trump so much, blah, 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 blah. I am a progressive organizer, and there is no fucking way I'm going to let this motherfucker off the hook. Whichever way you go, you're going to have to go that way if you want to get out of jury duty, and most people do not want to serve it. So this is a problem, by the way, with our justice system. The fact that, like, the dumbest ass people who don't know how to get out of jury duty end up having to serve on these trials, you guys. But yeah, I mean, I could give them a mixed bag of results depending on what kind of case I'm facing. Oh, well, you know, I worked for a company for 4+ years where we were selling to police agencies. So clearly I have a bias to police people, right? Or I was an organizer for Bernie Sanders. I can give you any answer you need out of my background to get me the fuck out of jury duty. Oh, by the way, I can't walk. Can't walk right now, you guys. Like, how does anybody even end up on jury duty? I think this is really something that we need to reevaluate as a society, that if the basic public can so easily get out of jury duty unless you're totally fucking stupid or retired and bored. Let's be real.
Admitted during the course of the trial. Now, those are some mental gymnastics that can be really tough for jurors to play, right? It's kind of like unringing a bell once you've heard something. But you know what? This is, I'm going to call it the fiction of our jury system. Jurors are presumed to follow the instructions of a judge. And when they are questioned under oath during voir dire, during jury selection, they swear under the penalties of perjury that they're answering these questions truthfully. And Brian, I've had so many jurors say something like, no, I can't put it out of my mind. I know he's a guilty SOB. And that's the kind of juror that we excuse for cause, because they have expressed that they really can't sit fairly and impartially as a juror in that case. So it's a bit of a fiction, but it is the kind of fiction that kind of keeps the criminal justice system up and running.
Just as a quick aside, and I know we've touched on this before, this idea that, you know, if you're a Trump supporter and you kind of ingratiate yourself into the jury by saying whatever you got to say just to get in there, is it possible, like, just gaming this out, if you are in a jury deliberation and some rabid Trump supporter has snuck through, and maybe they don't have any social media footprint, so that nothing that they said during jury selection could be fact checked. Some rabid Trump supporter comes in.
Well, hang on a second. Is this the kind of trial where you need a unanimous verdict, or is it the kind of trial where you need just a portion of the jury? Because there's that too, right? There's that too. You have to convince like a certain amount of them, and it's based on a lower bar. It's not like without a shadow of a doubt, right? It's the it's called something else, but I'm not an attorney or anything, so I can't remember what it's exactly called. It's something like it's a lesser type of sentencing type of crime where it's based on, does it seem like we have enough information? But I can't remember what it's called because that was not my specialty, you guys. I'm not going there.
Is just immovable and says, regardless of the facts of this case, I am with Trump all the way. I guess what happens in that scenario, and the rest of, like, let's say the jury, everybody but that one person is on board with convicting him, and you have this one person who was only there because his or her goal from the very beginning was just to protect Trump. What happens? Like, in the rest of the jury, can they do anything? Is there any, or is that just it? Once they've made it through the jury selection, if they're on the jury, then whatever happens.
Yeah, what a great question. I wish we had a whole hour because I teach an entire class on this very circumstance, and I contended with this very circumstance several times as a career prosecutor. So here's sort of the general overview of what happens. First of all, yes, everybody works very hard to get truthful, accurate information out of jurors during jury selection, so a mole cannot sneak on the jury with an ulterior motive, wanting to decide the case based on something other than the evidence. It does happen sometimes, and here's how the system handles it when it happens. I was trying a RICO case, and there was a juror who ended up outing himself as basically having lied during jury selection, having an ulterior motive, and he started violating rules that had been set by the court. What happened in that case is the jurors reported it to the judge by way of a written note. We held the hearing, and the judge ordered that juror to be removed during the course of the deliberations. There is a mechanism to have an alternate juror come back, a juror who'd sat through the entire trial, heard all of the evidence. That alternate juror can then replace the offending juror mid-deliberations, and then there's a standard instruction the court gives, and that is, ladies and gentlemen, you are to begin your deliberations anew, as if you never deliberated. So you are now starting from square one with a new jury. Get to work. I've had that happen multiple times, and juries have reached results, including guilty verdicts after that. Here's the danger in that, Brian. If it looks like a judge or the parties are trying to oust a juror for their honestly held beliefs regarding the evidence, what we don't want is a system that can kick out a juror who is holding out for guilty or not guilty, contrary to all of their fellow jurors, because you have to make sure you protect the integrity and the opinions of all 12 jurors, even when they are, seriously disagreeing over guilt or innocence. So to answer your question, it happens. It doesn't happen frequently. There's a mechanism to address it. But boy, you better get it right, because if you get it wrong, I can promise you, in the event of conviction, it will go up on appeal, and the appellate court will reverse the appeal and send it back down for a new trial.
Got it. Okay, let's finish off with this. Trump is currently trying to have this case, the Manhattan DA's case, moved from state court to federal court. Why is he doing that? Is it because he doesn't think he's going to get a fair shake with the New York jury?
I think he already failed in that, didn't he? Wasn't that already overturned? Because I saw something about that like 2 days ago or yesterday or something. I saw that he's trying to do some Hail Mary passes, but I think that was already rejected, wasn't it, Brian? Come on now.
Oh, I have no doubt he's doing it because he believes he has a better chance of winning an acquittal in federal court than he does in local New York state court. I don't tend to agree with that. But his reason is, you can have a case removed from local court, state court to federal court if there is some, for a number of reasons, including if there is some sort of uniquely federal thing that has to be litigated by the federal court. For example, if Donald Trump was on trial for committing acts that were within the scope of his official presidential duties, well, then he may have a robust immunity claim that should properly be litigated in federal court. Here's the thing. In this case, paying off playmates and porn stars and falsifying business records in the process because you're trying to steal a presidential election doesn't exactly qualify as within the scope of presidential duties. So in my opinion, he doesn't have any hope that this case will successfully be removed from state court and tried in federal court. But it doesn't surprise me that he's trying.
Okay. Well, we'll leave it there. Obviously, thanks to this new development here, we'll have some news as soon as May 23rd, which is the first time that Trump is going to have to appear before the judge in the Manhattan DA's case. So if you want to stay on top of whatever happens in that pretrial hearing, make sure to subscribe. The links are right here on the screen. I'm Brian Tyler.
All right. Thanks, Brian. Brian Tyler Cohen and Glenn Kirshner. Y'all do a great segment, but I really hate commercials, and I think everybody else does too.